Today's episode is sponsored by Omaze. Go to omaze.com/race. Oh, hey guys. You just caught me mid-thought just thinking about all the various bits that make the A45S unique. Do you guys like that? If you do and you haven't yet, please hit the subscribe button and hit the bell icon as well. This is just the tip of the iceberg at RBR. So guys, we have explored the A45S a number of times on Remove Before Race. Sometimes it was the engine, sometimes it was the drift mode, and the last time we did it, it was on track in Spain, driving it hard. But today is finally the time for the definitive road review, where I've had the car for a week and I've had time to really push it hard and live with the car as well. It's the car that AMG refer to as the super sports car of the compact segment, and it is the brand new AMG A45S 4MATIC Plus. So guys, I'm super excited to announce that Omaze, with this episode, are offering you guys the chance to win a brand new Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon alongside $20,000 in the trunk. Hopefully not like this. All you have to do is go to omaze.com/race for your chance to win. Through this, you'll help represent justice who are fighting to help make a fairer legal system throughout the USA. Now, you guys will remember the brand new G-Wagon that we reviewed in probably our most ambitious video ever. And I still love and miss my own car. And with that 20,000, I would probably put a down payment on the A45S, though I'm a bit of an idiot. So if you want to enter this, please head to omaze.com/race. Enter with a donation. You could win your own new Mercedes-Benz G-Wagon and $20,000. So that's once again, omaze.com/race. Good luck guys, and please support this great cause. Now back to the episode. So guys, you probably know the story of the A45 already by now, but I'm going to recap it anyway. So in 2013, when this car was first shown to the world, it was a really weird niche and car for AMG to ever build, because this was a company that was better known for super saloons or supercars, and they were just entering the hot hatch segment with a 4-cylinder engine when they're better known for their V8s and V12s. So the market was nervous, customers were nervous, but they released the car anyway, believing in themselves. And what they released was a little hatchback with AMG DNA both inside and out, producing up to 380 brake horsepower in later versions. And it ended up being a veritable hit with all their customers, so much so that, in fact, I actually re-bought one, having missed it so much, having not had one for years. So I've got this. This is the original that I've done some aesthetic modifications to, and we're going to have a full video on why I still think that this is a great car in the very near future. But just to recap, it had fun handling, it had an amazing soundtrack, it had great AMG looks outside and in, part inspired by the C63 Black Series, and it was just such a great daily to enjoy with good MPG. And did I mention how good that soundtrack is? Because it's bloody good in this previous A45. Have a listen to it. So this little hatchback ended up becoming a big hit for both AMG and their customers. But it wasn't without its faults either. It was really low tech inside in terms of the technology available to you. And the cabin itself, though, looked nice. Again, it was very much last generation. In terms of the handling, it did have its limits as well. And if you look at both the gearbox and the engine, it was all very much old school, with a very old school turbo response and a bit of a hesitation, something that we will discuss later on the drive as well. So then what came after this in our new generation today was the A35. And without being exhaustive on this car, because we've reviewed it many times, it basically has the exact same formula as that previous A45, even to the length of sharing various components, except for not having a hand-built engine by AMG and of course having less power. So very much the same idea of a great daily car, but still not quite that top AMG level. Still, you have people say and comment, and I'm sure you guys would have heard it or maybe even said it yourselves, that why bother with the new A45S when the A35 is already such a great car? And I accept that comment. So why don't we actually humor you and go into that line of thinking. Let's take this A35 and get rid of everything that doesn't come into the A45S. So let's begin with the engine. That can go. The brakes can go as well because they aren't used. The entire 4MATIC system can go as well. In fact, this entire front end has to leave because it's not shared. We can leave the lights though. And various other aesthetics have to leave as well. Oh, and the gearbox. Yep, the gearbox isn't shared either. What do we have left? It's basically just the shell of the car. Now we have to add back in the stuff that makes the A45S unique, and hopefully that'll start to get us to understand why this is such an important car. So first of all, let's add in the main star of the show, and that is the M139 engine. Remember that name and number, guys, because this is a very important engine for AMG's future. That comes back in. It's the most powerful four-cylinder production car currently in the world. We'll go into that more later. So that's gone in. We also need bigger brakes. We need also the new wider front track and the different camber on this car. We also need the 4MATIC Plus system like you see in the E63S and the GT4 door. By name, it's a bit of a different application here on the rear axle. Of course, you've got its own unique aesthetics, and finally an 8-speed gearbox as well. So essentially, absolutely nothing has been shared in the main components of this car with the A35. Now, this M139 engine, it's so important we have to explore it a little bit. No parts are shared with the previous A45 in this engine itself. And in terms of the engine structure, although it's traversely mounted like the previous car, it's done so 180 degrees the other way. So we've got an air intake here that I'll show you from our walk around that we did of that engine back then. And we've got the exhaust release on the rear of it, and the entire engine has been designed in a way to be more aerodynamic and for better cooling, because this engine really hots up having that much more power. We've got three different types of cooling in this. We've got air cooling done through this front air duct here. We've got water cooling, and we've got oil cooling, all to help keep the temperature of this down. We also have an all aluminium crankcase. We've got 2.1 bar boost pressure in the S model as well. We've got a unique set of cylinder heads. Of course, it's still a twin scroll turbocharger, which is exceedingly efficient. It revs all the way to 7,200 RPM rather than 6,500 in the last car. And what this ends up giving you is firstly a more natural power curve that AMG have created for this, rather than a very right angle type one that you would have in a normal turbo engine. So we will see what that feels like later. And performance wise, 421 brake horsepower in this S model, which is a massive amount. 500 Newton meters and a sub 4 second 0 to 60, treading on the heels of the AMG GT, and the power to weight ratio exceeds many supercars of today. So finally, we're starting to understand a little bit that comment of the super sports car in the compact division. Then I mentioned the 4MATIC Plus system and how it's different to E63 and GT4 door, but vastly superior to that old A45. The old one only had up to 50% power between the front and the rear. It was an old Haldex system. This one has got up to 100% that can go to the rear, up to 50% to the front, and then up to 100% can go to either of the rear wheels. And that means that this car has a special drift mode, just like the E63S introduced, but this is more like what we saw in the Ford Focus. So we've got multi-disc clutches, two of them in the rear axle, that allow this car then to send power 100% either to the left or the right as needed. And with this AMG torque control, you can imagine the kind of very understeery character of the previous car has been replaced with a car that often feels a lot more rear-wheel drive than the predecessor, which is only a boon for a car that's trying to be more sports car than simply a fast and fun hatchback. Now, as I said, you've got a brand new 8-speed, which I'm super surprised how reactive it is, and you will see that later. You've got unique suspension as well. Of course, we said we've got bigger brakes, particularly in the S model. You've also got more stiffening done both to the body and white, and with the aluminium shear panel and extra struts and braces across the entirety of the car, making this, again, so unique compared to the previous car. There's also something called AMG Real Sound in this, and I will explore that later on. Essentially what that is pumping sound from the engine into the cabin live via a microphone to get over all these nasty and annoying EU regs to do with sound. And of course, design is so important particularly when cars like the RS3 look so awesome, and just the new A3 has been unveiled as well. And this car is an extremely aggressive looking thing. It's very much AMG GT on the front with the same type of grille shape, even the same design of lights, massive air intakes. Aero package of course helps in that regard, but just having that super wide front end with the meaty wheel arches makes this car stand out, particularly both against rivals and the predecessor car. The rear, not that different to A35, which is a real shame, but I do like the quad pipes. Not much else to see on the rear. The whole package though looks fantastic. And then, as we said, nothing on this car has been left unchanged by AMG. But really, although you understand how different it is in terms of the components, you need to see how all of that then translates. And you're only going to see that when I really drive it hard on the road, which we're going to do next. And I want to show you AMG Emotion Start again and again and again, because it sounds bloody good in this car. Now, benefit to UK customers about this A45S interior, unlike Europe where you'd get a lot of these extra creature comforts and AMG bits in the A35, in the UK you only get, for example, the AMG bucket seats, the drive control select units, etc. in the A45S, so it kind of keeps this car a bit special versus the other cars on the market, because it means your cars are that much more AMG inside, which is kind of what it always should be. I don't like the idea, and it doesn't sit well with me, that in Europe the 35s can look identical to the 63s inside. It's the same with the 53s and the 63s now as well. That really bothers me. There needs to be things that are different. Of course, you got the two big screens here with specific AMG application in both track pace for recording your 0 to 60s, AMG performance displays, the unique Super Sport display on front as well. I want to show you how well that animates, because it's got some really nice animations to it that I don't think anyone's really ever shown on screen. I certainly haven't. And I just want to show you when, for example, you got boost pressure or gear change or other bits and pieces, what those animations look like, the different stuff you can have on the Super Sport display on either side as well. It's just one of the best looking and animated screens you'll ever find in a car today. And I don't think that's been celebrated enough. So really great job by the designers of Mercedes-Benz, particularly the UI designers. I absolutely love the work that you've done here. Now, of course, MBUX is such an advanced system. It's really changed the game for Mercedes customers who've ever used it. Anyone else, for example, I just said Mercedes and it's woken up. So, hey, Mercedes.
What can I do for you?
What do you think of BMW?
The same as you, otherwise you would not be sitting here.
So that's fun, but the point of the voice control is you can just naturally say to it that you want to go to a certain supermarket or a certain restaurant or an airport, and that's all you have to do. You don't really need to delve into anything else, and it'll understand you. It talks very naturally, unlike many operating systems in cars that you would have seen. So it's a really great system in that regard. Of course, unlike, for example, Audis, where you've only got touchscreen, this is both touchscreen, touchpad, touch here, and voice. So 4 different ways of communicating with the car rather than being restricted to just 1 or 2, again, which is something great. And then, say, unlike the BMWs, where you've got only 1 digital screen, here you've got a plethora of different designs that you can choose for your car and for you, the driver, to customize your driver zone. We're going to talk about the daily usability, particularly the suspension element, but we'll do that when we go on the drive. What I want to show you now is AMG Emotion Start. So if you start this car up normally, you'll get a very subdued startup. But if you do it the way that you're meant to do on every single new AMG, which is something called AMG Emotion Start, that is pressing the button and holding one of the upshift pedals, you get a lovely pop, pop, bang, bang, bang going on, which is exactly what you want out of an A45 in particular, because it was the car that started the popping and banging for AMG, and then it works every single time that you start the car up. I'm just going to keep doing it. And that's so important for the AMG customer. I can't put a value to it, to be able to start your car up and for it to sound like an AMG. Now, as I said, so many components in this car have changed to make it unique, but to really justify why you would spend near on 60K on a car like this, you need to see just how incredible it is on the road. I didn't appreciate that in Spain. We're all going to appreciate that right now. So guys, finally on UK roads with the A45S super hatch. Oh, this is going to be exciting. Really wanted to get it on UK roads for a number of reasons. A, because there's always differences, I feel, between UK cars and what we find in Europe, particularly because those cars are often pre-production, and the cars that we end up with here are very much the final version of the vehicle. But also just to get an idea of how it handles our roads, because our roads aren't always perfect. And of course it's more of a level playing field versus everything else that we've tested on the channel on these very roads as well. So yes, very excited. Wow, this car is fast! I'm doing 120 miles an hour across this bend. Woo! Well, the last time I drove this car was on track, if you guys remember, and very little bit on roads. And you know, you can't really tell when you're darting in and out of traffic and whatnot, but luckily at the studio here you get such a good idea of what a car can do. Why is this car so bloody fast? Wow! This is incredibly fast, this car. And I think we got to start there, really. I mean, this is not what the old A45 feels like, and I should know because I daily one as my main car, the first gen A45S. And this engine is on another level to that car. Let's start with the engine. Of course, as we said, it's shifted 180 degrees, better cooling, much better response, a lot more power, the most powerful production four-cylinder in the world. But this is just terminology. It doesn't mean jack all. What you guys need to understand is how different it is when you're actually driving. And if we compare it to the old A45, that car always had a hesitation when pulling off. It didn't matter which version of the car it was, didn't matter if you were in the highest race setting or not. When pulling off, there was always a slight hesitation to both the gearbox and the engine response. That is not the case with this car. It doesn't matter where you are in terms of gear or speed. You put your foot down, you will get power, you'll get a lot of it immediately. A lot of this is the gearbox as well. The gearbox is very, very good in this car. Immediate shifts, 2 to 3 is very, very quick, very short ratio. Again, very different to the original A45. But the gearbox is rapid. It wasn't long ago that I drove the GT3 RS here, and I'm getting flashbacks of that car when I'm going from first, second, third to fourth. And there's no higher praise that I can give than that. The higher red line, of course, going all the way to 7,000 rather than 6.5 now, all compounds the experience. Does it feel like a naturally aspirated engine? I don't know, man. You see, it's so responsive, so responsive to the touch. Whereas the natural engines that I'm used to from AMG, you need to coach them to wake up a little bit, much like the old A45s feel. This one is just immediate. It wants to bunny hop down the road, particularly if you're in Sport Plus, which means it just feels eager all the time. That's of course a great thing, but equally, I was kind of endeared to the old A45 in the way that it felt like a more powerful car because it wasn't as willing to shoot off. Because I felt the power curve was perhaps a little bit more similar, even though I know on paper this one is more similar to a natural engine. It's an odd one. Truly though, when you drive this, and a lot of people say, well, what about A35? It's so similar in terms of engine and sound and all the rest of it. And yeah, you're right, it is. But this feels twice as fast. Believe me, guys, I've had a lot of miles in A35. And believe me, guys, this A45S feels double the car when it comes to speed, double the car when it comes to engine, double the car when it comes to handling, that wider track helping make this a completely different car to the 35 series. You cannot match them together. This is such a dynamic thing. Yes, there's hints of understeer. Chris Harris was right. But what he neglected to mention is the lengths that you have to go to coax it. And then, of course, if you put it into its famed drift mode, you get a bit more play in the rear, which helps negate that as well. So, 6 of one, half a dozen of the other. This car is on another level to the old A45. I am jealous of this and the way that it handles, the amount of power that it has. I really have to rein it in. You have to be so careful when you're putting the power down. Do not turn on drift mode if you're just an amateur, guys. The the steering, like I always say with AMG and Porsche, absolutely brilliant in terms of feel. And the last time, guys, that I had this much fun on these particular roads, I think it was the 992, 911. And that just proves AMG's point. They've made a little sports car in the compact segment like no one else has been able to do. RS3, all these other cars, you're really going to have to up your game to get anywhere near this beast. How does a little hatchback feel like a sports car? Of course, what you're missing then invariably is sound. I can try and coach some. Very reminiscent of A35. It's good to have something come out of this car, unlike a lot of modern cars. But that upshift bang that you had in the old A45S that you really loved has all but disappeared thanks to the new regulations. That being said, having AMG real sound in the car, which if you don't know is a microphone that picks up the actual engine sound of the car, pumps it into your interior. Guys, I know it sounds blasphemous, but it's an absolute godsend if you drive modern cars that don't have that kind of system, because those cars are so motivated. This UK car seems to have slightly louder ones than what we saw on the press drive, but if you've driven A35, you're going to get that kind of sound coming out of this car. The benefit you have, though, you have AMG real sound. So if we knock it down a gear, that rev build up you get directly from the engine coming in. It's lovely. And look, I'm at 110 miles per hour already. You couldn't do this in the old A45. So it's got the speed, it's got the handling, it's not really got the sound. That could probably be fixed. We're going to look at fixing that on RBR. How, when, why, what car? You'll have to wait and see. Subscribe. Something very cool is going to be happening with A45 soon. So as a super hatch, as a performance hatch, I've never driven anything like this. I was harsh on it, I think, when I first drove it. Driving it more now, I really appreciate just how bloody brilliant this car is. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the daily usability of it. I'm going to chuck it back into comfort. It's a good car to use daily, the A45S. When I first drove it in Spain, I thought the suspension was quite jarring. Having lived with the original A45, I was reminded what jarring is actually like. And it was something else that Chris Harris also said in his little rant about the car. I think he was having a bad day that day. And he said that he found that the suspension was very jarring, amongst a whole host of other things. Having lived with this versus the previous car, it's 200 to 300% better than that car. Versus rivals like the M2, it's better. So I'm not sure what he was, you know, measuring it up against, but compared to previous cars and rivals, it seems okay to me. It's weird, I was left a bit cold when I did the press drive, but having driven this now and that love of all things AMG within me, I really want to own one of these cars, and I can't give it a higher rating than that. Truly it is the super hatch, truly it has got some mega power. AMG have done a fantastic job on this car. So guys, huge thumbs up from me on this AMG super hatch. I'd like to also try the CLA 45S in the UK. We're going to do that and see what the difference is between that and this raw monster. So if you enjoyed this full review of the A45S, please do like, subscribe and share it. And I'll see you guys soon. I'm having too much fun in this. Too much fun. See you next time. Thank you to Amaze for sponsoring today's episode. Go to amaze.com/race.